Hey guys, it's Coach Fro from rocioflores.com, and today's topic is, what should I expect from my friends? This is an interesting concept because we all have friends, and a lot of the times the way we become friends with someone just happens, and so we may not be thinking about what am I supposed to be expecting from these relationships, because if you have a good friend, you probably just like them and you're having a good friendship. But for many people, friendships are kind of difficult. They can become a source of stress for people who have a hard time or feel like they're having a really hard time connecting with others. And as we get older, a lot of people realize that making friends, one, is a lot harder, a lot more rare, takes a lot more effort, and it's just not as fun and easy as it was back when we were kids. Obviously, when we were kids, there was very little thought that went into what makes a friend, what doesn't make a friend, and what we enjoyed about our friends. We just either liked people or didn't. As adults, that is a little harder. A common question that I get from people when they're trying to make friends is, what is it okay to expect from a friend, or how much is it okay to demand from a friend?
Before I begin, I want to invite you to subscribe to my monthly newsletter. There I share the month's blog posts. I talk a little bit about what I've been going through in my own life and how what I learned can help you with your own personal journey. I also send you a ton of health, career, and personal development freebies. The link will be in the description below, so make sure that you get on there.
As always, I'm not going to tell you what the answer is. Instead, I'm going to give you some of the framework for how you can make this decision, because at the end of the day, it's 100% your decision. And this sounds like a weird way to answer that, because when it comes to friends, we tend to think that it's their decision, right? Like when we think about what can I demand from a friend or what can I expect from them, we think about what their tolerance level is and not what our tolerance level is. In reality, it's 100% your responsibility. So let me explain that in a way that doesn't sound so tough. The first thing that I want you to think about is, what do you want? What do you want out of this friendship? As we get older, it becomes a little bit harder for us to be okay with relationships that include things that we just don't want in our lives. This is why high school relationships, college relationships sort of fizzle out. And that's because what once glued you together, so being in classes together, hanging out during lunch, or going out partying, etc., is no longer a thing that you might do. When our interests change, it's common for our friends to change along with them. But our interests themselves are not the only way to gauge whether or not somebody would or would not be a good friend. Because let's say you both love knitting. Y'all aren't going to be knitting 24 hours a day. And knitting might not be the only way that you connect. It might be a great way to connect and to spend time together, to bond, and to maybe even find people that you might want to be friends with. But your interests are not the sole reason for why you spend time with a person. So you have to ask yourself, what do I want from a friendship? This can be a very difficult question because we all want something different. And I don't think there's a wrong or a right answer. Obviously, if you're like the kind of person who you want very specific things from the people in your life, in your relationships, to meet somebody who wants something different feels like they're wrong. But turn that around and they think you're wrong. So this is why it can't be a situation where I tell you, you have to look for people who are supportive of blah, 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 blah. Because I think each person has a very different and very unique sense of what they want. Some people want somebody who just listens to them. Some people want somebody who they can vent to. Some people want people who are supportive of certain things in their life. And it really just depends on what you want. You need to understand what you want out of your relationships. And then the next step is, what do you not want from your relationships? I think that this concept is super interesting because what people don't want is so vast, so different. Every person gives me a very different answer. And you would think that most people would agree with what they don't want from a relationship, right? Nobody wants a bad relationship. Nobody wants to spend time with somebody they don't like. Nobody wants to have bad friends. But what that actually means is so different. And I truly believe that everyone has people out there who they can connect with, who they can have positive, healthy relationships with. But we're all so different that we actually have to do a lot of work to figure out who fits and who doesn't. I don't believe that everyone has to be friends with everyone. I think everybody can be friendly with everyone, and everybody can be pleasant and polite and get along and have unity and have love. But that's not the same as being friends. To be friends is a choice. And so you have to understand what you're not cool with, what you don't like, what you wouldn't be okay with, aside from what you want, you have to understand what you don't want. Then comes the hardest point. Are you willing to communicate what you do and don't want? This is where most people struggle, because it's really easy to start spending time with someone and to just say, I have a new friend. What happens when they do something that you genuinely don't like or that you don't want to continue? Are you willing to speak up and say something? Because that will determine the nature of your relationship. We set boundaries every day, whether we're consciously thinking about it or not, whether we've thought about what our boundaries are or not, whether we make a decision that we set a boundary and we're going to stick by it or not. We are setting boundaries. We show people how to treat us. Whether we like it or not, every single day we're making decisions about whether or not we are okay with the way that we are being treated. We have to be willing to communicate our decisions about what we want in our life and what we aren't okay with. So you have to ask yourself, am I willing to communicate these wants and these demands and these expectations? This next step is where you get to give them all the responsibility. Are you willing to walk away if a person decides that they don't agree with you? When I talk about agreeing, I'm not talking about agreeing on interests or views or opinions. No, it has to do with the fact that you communicated what you are okay with, what you're not okay with. Now, they get to decide whether they're okay with or not okay with what you are expecting or demanding of them. This is the painful part. That's when they're deciding if they're wanting to be friends with you. And it can be a very painful, very difficult process. You could lose a friend. But are you willing to lose that friend for that boundary that you're about to set? Understand that it doesn't matter how many times you yell, you want things done a certain way, that you don't like certain things, or that you're not okay with certain things. If you are not willing to walk away, if you are not willing to break the relationship for that boundary, it's not a boundary. It's just you complaining about something that you're not willing to change. And I know that sounds really hard, sounds rough, sounds really mean. I know saying it is hard for me to say it without assuming that you might have an emotional reaction to it, because it sucks. But it's just how things work. It's not an opinion, it's just how things are. If we draw a line in the sand and we allow people to cross it, and then draw a new line and allow people to cross it, then you're just drawing. That line means nothing. It is showing that person that what you're saying is just words. Your actions are not following through on what you're actually saying. And you're showing that person that these boundaries that you're trying to set, these things that you say you care about, you don't really care about them. Because if you did, you would walk away. That's really hard. To make a decision to walk away from somebody just because they didn't do X, Y, and Z is very hard. So you have to be 100% serious about these things that you want. That's why I think it's so important to spend a lot of time thinking about, what do I want and what do I not want? Because a lot of the times we're thinking that we should want certain things or that we shouldn't want certain things because that's what we've been taught. We've been taught this is healthy, this is not healthy, or this is good for you, not good for you, etc. So we have these ideas like friends are supposed to do this, or friends are supposed to do that, or I'm supposed to want these things. But if you're not willing to break the relationship for those things, then you don't want those things. And that's okay. It's okay to change your mind and think, maybe I want this person in my life more than I want this specific thing in my life. And for many people, that's okay. So the next step is, are you willing to live with the consequences of this? Are you okay with staying in a situation the way it is? It's really easy to complain about your friends. Oh, she doesn't listen to me, or she's always telling me rude things, or she never shows up on time and I'm so frustrated. But you're not doing anything. And you're putting the responsibility on them to change when they don't feel the need to change. If they felt the need to change, they would change. If you feel the need for them to change, you need to change. It's your responsibility. So in step 4, if you decided, I don't want to walk away, I care about this relationship and this person more than I care about them being punctual, then are you okay with living with the consequences of that? There are people in my life that I absolutely love. And they're different than me. You know, they have different views, different ways of acting, and I want them in my life more than I want the stability of having somebody who wants different things. So I have to make a decision. This person's always late, but I want to have a relationship with this person more than I want to be on time. So I just plan to do something different while they're late. That is something I've chosen to live with. There are people on the other end who could be wonderful, amazing people, but you don't care about the relationship more than you care about the things that they do. And so if you are not okay with them crossing a certain line, you have to be willing to break off that relationship, because it's not fair to expect them to change. They have to make the choice to change because they want to change, not because you want them to change. Now, a lot of the times when you communicate these boundaries, when you're telling people, I'm not okay with you talking to me that way, or I'm not okay with you doing this, or I would appreciate it if you told me ahead of time that this was going to happen, etc. If people like you and they're doing their own balancing act of trying to make a decision about whether or not they value you or their boundary, they're going through the same thought process whether or not they're thinking about it in that manner. You have to recognize that you have your responsibilities, they have their responsibilities, and they're going through the exact same thought process as you are. You might just have watched this video and realized that there are steps to it, or that you could think about it in this organized way. But at the end of the day, we all make the decisions. It's a risk analysis, right? We're thinking about, are we willing to lose this person in order to gain this peace? Or am I going to choose that I want to continue living my life this way and lose this relationship? So either you're making the decision or you're allowing them to make the decision, but you are responsible for the choices that you choose, and they're responsible for the choices that they choose. We can only react based on our own decisions and not anybody else's. I know that this is tough, and losing a friend is actually really, really painful. It's a really hard process. You're grieving just like any other kind of grief, because a lot of the times our friends are the people who we've chosen to spend time with, we've chosen to share things with, we've chosen to completely devote ourselves to, but they were somebody we chose. And it's very different than a family member or a spouse or somebody who we are connected with on a different kind of level. A friend is someone you have to choose often. And people change, and people's boundaries change, and what people are okay with and what people are willing to do and what they want out of life changes. And every day you have to make a decision about what you will communicate, what you won't, and what you will allow and what you won't allow. It's not so much about what you expect from your friends, but what you will allow as an expectation, what you will be okay with expecting, what you will be okay with demanding, what they will be okay with you demanding. Every relationship requires a balancing act and a daily decision that you want to be in the relationship. And it's not easy, but definitely worth it if you want to have healthy, positive relationships in your life that are life-giving, not soul-sucking. For those of you who are deciding that you actually have pretty healthy relationships and you're already doing this and it's working out, that's awesome. I hope that you can continue to do this in your life and that you are having these amazing, good relationships in your life. For those of you who are realizing that some of the relationships that you have are not healthy and may not be life-giving for you, I'm going to link a resource in the description section of this video about grief. Because when we decide to break off a relationship, we are going through a grieving process, and it can be very difficult and very painful. So I want to make sure that you have the information to help you understand what you might go through. I really hope that this video helps you. Remember that 1, you need to understand what you want. 2, you need to understand what you don't want. 3, you have to ask yourself if you're willing to communicate those things. 4, are you willing to walk away? And 5, are you willing to live with the consequences of these decisions?
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you found it useful, please like it, comment, react, subscribe, text, email, whatever it is that you do online. Thank you and have a blessed day. Goodbye.